Om Vasudevasutam Devam Kausachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishno Vande Jagadgurum Shri Krishno Vande Jagadgurum Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha Srimad Bhagavad Gita Atha Panchamodhyayaha KarmaSamnyasaYoga, the yoga of renunciation of action. Pranams from Dr. R.J. Kalpana. Welcome to the study of the Bhagavad Gita. In the first chapter of the Gita, we studied Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the dilemma of Arjuna, whether he has to pick up arms and go to war against members of his own family. In the second chapter, Sankhya Yoga, Bhagwan Shri Krishna for the first time addresses Arjuna and immediately opens the door for knowledge, for spiritual knowledge, where he speaks about the presence of the divine within the gross human body, where he says that the only knowledge worth having is the knowledge of the divine. In chapter 3, we studied Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, where Sri Krishna introduces us to the concept of action and how, having come into this human dimension, how no one is free from action and everybody has to act. Their very existence becomes an action, and therefore these actions lead them towards more bondage, towards forming of more samskaras. And so in the path of yoga of action, Krishna teaches us how to act without any attachment in order to liberate ourselves from the bondage of our own samskaras and how to come that much more closer to the divine. In chapter 4, Jnana KarmaSamnyasaYoga, Krishna goes one step further and teaches us how to even renounce the knowledge underlying our actions and thereby attain purity. There is no greater purifier as knowledge, because that knowledge that is garnered through great effort, who has attained that knowledge through their purity of heart, through a prolonged practice of Karma Yoga, automatically achieves the light. Enlightenment is what he is referring to here. So now we come to chapter 5, KarmaSamnyasaYoga, how to renounce actions and thereby not generate any new samskaras and free ourselves from the concept of bondage to this human dimension. In the first shloka, Arjuna said, Krishna, you extol Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, and then Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. Pray tell me which of the two is decidedly conducive to my good. Like a typical impatient student, Arjuna steps up to the plate and says, all right, you have given me two paths, Sankhya Yoga, the path of knowledge, and Karma Yoga, the path of action. But now tell me, which one of them should I adopt? Which is the path that I should walk upon? That will bring me that much more closer to you. And in Shloka 2, Shri Bhagavan said, the yoga of knowledge and the yoga of action both lead to supreme bliss. Of the two, however, the yoga of action, being easier of practice, is superior to the yoga of knowledge. And Krishna here, out of the immense compassion that only enlightened seers and the divine are even capable of, understand the limitations and the challenges the human mind faces on planet Earth, and thereby, having understood that not everyone has the intellectual capacity to walk the path of the yoga of knowledge, to be able to understand abstract concepts as a causal body, subtle body, gross body, Karana Sharira, Stula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, within one's own self, and even more complex and abstract knowledge forms as to what is perishable and what is imperishable. And therefore, Krishna says that Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, being easier to practice, even the most simple of minds will find it much more conducive, less taxing to the brain, and therefore Karma Yoga, or the yoga of action, is superior to Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. In Shloka 3, Krishna says, the Karma Yogi who neither hates nor desires should be ever considered a renouncer. For Arjuna, he who is free from the pairs of opposites is easily freed from bondage. And so here, the title of this chapter, KarmaSamnyasaYoga, the yoga of renunciation of action, is explained here. And so Krishna says that the Karma Yogi, who neither likes nor dislikes, who is neither attracted to nor repulsed by, should be considered a renunciate, because he has renounced all attachments. He is moved beyond opposites. He's transcended this world of dualities, and therefore he is freed from bondage. In heartfulness meditation, once we cross the heart region, which consists of 5 chakras, the practitioner of heartfulness meditation gets liberated, because they have crossed the world of opposites and they have moved into the mind region or the cosmic region. In Shloka 4, Krishna says, "It is the ignorant, not the wise, who say that Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga lead to divergent results. For one who is firmly established in either gets the fruit of both, which is the same, God realization." There is much wisdom in this shloka, because Krishna says, irrespective of the path you choose, if the destination is the same, you will arrive there. If the goal is that of merger with the divine, irrespective of which path you choose to take to arrive there, you will reach it eventually. Some of us might prefer a road trip from Chennai to Bangalore. Some might prefer to take a train. Some would prefer a bus, while others in a much hurry would prefer a flight, as long as the destination is the same. The means adopted to reach that destination, although it varies, eventually everyone reaches the same destination. But the whole purpose, the whole point of selecting a path is to select one that is conducive to our tendencies, is to select one that brings us that much closer to the goal efficiently, effectively, in a timely fashion. And therefore, Krishna says here that it's the ignorant people who say that the paths are varied and lead to different results. But that is not true, because whichever path you choose, the yoga of knowledge or the yoga of action, remain firmly established in that path. Walk determinedly on that path towards the goal, because the goal of both the paths is the one and the same, God realization. In Shloka 5, Krishna says, "The supreme state which is reached by the Sankhya Yogi is attained also by the Karma Yogi. Therefore, he alone who sees Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga as one, so far as the result goes, really sees." And he is here once again reiterating the same fact, that although the sadhana paddhati, the methodology, might be different for Sankhya Yogis and Karma Yogis, the state of God realization remains one and the same. And so That person who understands this, who sees where the path leads, that person really sees. That person has a real, true understanding of both the yogas, the path of action and the path of knowledge. In Shloka 6, Krishna says, without Karma Yoga, however, Sankhya Yoga, renunciation of doership in relation to all activities of mind, senses, and body, is difficult to accomplish. Whereas the Karma Yogi, who keeps his mind fixed on God, reaches Brahma in no time, Arjuna. So therefore here Krishna is saying that therefore Krishna is saying here that Sankhya Yogi is difficult to practice simply because we must have a very firm grip on Karma Yoga in the first place, because just having the knowledge of an abstract concept of the divine is not sufficient. There is still the evils of attraction and repulsion. There is still the challenges of anger and lust. And if we make no attempt to purify ourselves, then Sankhya Yoga merely rests on an intellectual belief and not on any real action. So therefore, Sankhya Yoga is much more challenging path to adopt, because there has to be a complete renunciation of the concept of doership in whichever modes of activities one might indulge in, be it the mind, intellect-based, senses, or bodily actions. On the other hand, the Karma Yogi, who keeps his mind fixed on God and goes about his daily activities, reaches the divine in no time. In Shloka 7, Krishna says, the Karma Yogi who has fully conquered his mind and mastered his senses, whose heart is pure, and who has identified himself with the self of all beings, remains untainted even though performing action. And so here Krishna explains to us that the Karma Yogi one has to fully conquer his mind, meaning self-discipline. There must be complete self-discipline of the mind, mastery of the senses, self-control, whose heart is pure, whose heart doesn't gravitate towards either likes or dislikes, but accepts both as the same, and who has identified himself with the self of all beings, meaning who understands the concept that everybody equally has a divine presence within them as Antaryami. Whether they have realized it or not is a fact apart. But that karma yogi who has fully conquered his mind, who has, with the process of self-discipline and self-control, has purified his heart, has purified his mind, has purified his senses, who is completely in acceptance of the presence of the causal body or the divine presence in all beings, even though that karma yogi indulges in performing actions, daily actions, actions of survival, Vedic rites and rituals, that karma yogi remains untainted. He still retains his purity. He doesn't become impure. The difference here is that the Sankhya yogi does not consider himself to be the doer of any action. Although his mind, intellect, and senses continue to perform all actions, the Sankhya yogi does not associate himself with any of those activities. He only feels that it is the tendencies, the gunas, the modes of Prakriti that are moving through him, and that he has nothing to do with them. And therefore, it is but natural that he should remain untainted by actions. Whereas the Karma Yogi regards himself as the doer, but he is performing his actions with constant remembrance of the divine, according to the divine strictures that is ordained in the Vedas, and therefore he is not bound by his actions. In Shloka 8 and 9, the Sankhya yogi, however, who knows the reality of things, must believe, even though seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating or drinking, walking, sleeping, breathing, speaking, answering the calls of nature, grasping and opening or closing the eyes, that he does nothing, holding that it is the senses that are moving amongst their objects. So for the Sankhya yogi, this phenomenal world is ephemeral and transient, and therefore it is illusory. And he distinguishes between that which is real and that which is unreal. And therefore, any act, any form of activity the Sankhya yogi engages in, he considers it only as that his tendencies, the Prakriti, the nature within him, is flowing through him and performing those actions. And therefore the Sankhya yogi can perform all the actions approved by the scriptures, right? What is said here as hearing and touching and smelling and eating and drinking and etc. All of that for the maintenance of his body or for living in society. And yet, that all of this believes that The Sankhya Yogi believes that all forms of activity, it is the senses that are engaged in and not he himself. In Shloka 10, Krishna says, "He who acts offering all actions to God and shaking off attachment remains untouched by sin, as the lotus leaf by water." And so here Krishna gives us the method by which we can release ourselves from generating more samskaras, by saying that offer everything to the divine, everything that you do, every act that we perform, be it eating, drinking, sleeping, talking, walking. Every action that we perform, when we offer it to the divine and we shake off all attachment to that action, considering that it is not I, the ego, that is performing these actions, but the divine himself, then we will remain untouched by our samskaras. We will remain free from creating any new samskaras. Here the translation reads, "remains untouched by sin." The translations has been done in the English language, and with all the limitations and challenges that takes place when we translate from one language to another, that too is prevalent here. So let us be kind to the translators, who are scholars, no doubt, and at the same time, let us also be aware and conscious that the English language is deeply rooted in Christian theology. And so let us be aware of the choice of words that we use. So remains untouched by sin in this shloka means that there is no new samskaras that are generated, because he is not even bound to his actions. He has given up his actions as an offering to the divine. And so he is like the lotus leaf on the water. If we have observed a lotus leaf and we sprinkle water on it, they just form little droplets and run across the expanse of the leaf. They do not wet the leaf remains as dry. So remain untouched, detached from your actions. In Shloka 11, Krishna says, "The karma yogis perform action only with their senses, mind, intellect, and body as well, withdrawing the feeling of mine in respect of them and shaking off attachment simply for the sake of self-purification." So this is very important. In the previous shloka in 10, we observed how we have to stop forming new samskaras. But we already have our little suitcase of sanchita karmas. We have a little overnight bag of prarabdha karma, which we have selected only for this particular lifetime. So we have all these samskaras, and therefore what Krishna suggests is that perform your actions using your intellect, your body, your mind, your senses, whatever is deemed necessary for your survival in this human dimension. but withdraw the feeling of I, me, myself from them. Shake off all ownership of attachment to said actions. And then your samskaras, the one that we have brought with us into this world, will get purified. We will be able to loosen ourselves from the bondage of these samskaras. Karma means action. Samskaras are the effects of these actions, the impressions that we gather during the course of these actions. And it is these impressions, it is these memories, it is these likes and dislikes that keeps us bound to the human dimension. In Shloka 12, Krishna says, offering the fruit of actions to God, the Karma Yogi attains everlasting peace in the shape of God realization. Whereas he who works with a selfish motive, being attached to the fruit of actions through desire, gets tied down. So here, Krishna is providing us with a view of both sides of the coin. So on the one side, you have the Karma Yogi who is offering up his actions, who is investing his actions with constant remembrance of the divine, who is offering up the fruits of his actions to the divine. And that Karma Yogi will attain God realization. The other side of the coin is the Karma Yogi who is invested in his action, who is invested in the results of his action, because every action is performed with selfishness, with greed, and therefore he is attached to the fruits of his action because of his desires, his wishes. And that Karma Yogi gets bound even more to life, even more to the human dimension. Om Yogesho Satchidanando Vasudevam Rajapriyam Dharma Samstapakam Viram Krishno Vande Jagadgurum. Shri Krishno Vande Jagadgurum. Om Shri Krishnarpanamastu.